episode closes out into the PSA, as usual, at the end of these episodes. And every episode, every review, I always said, love the PSAs. Hey legends, welcome back to a brand new episode of Coins Age Media. We are reviewing another little episode of He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, and this one is called Reign of the Monster. On the back of the case, all it says about this episode is the celebrations at Avion are interrupted by Skeletor's attack, where he kidnaps Stratos and his powerful staff. With the staff, the evil villain plans to release Molkrom from his magical crystal prison, enabling him to storm Castle Grayskull and become the true master of the universe. This episode definitely does expand the universe of Eternia ever so slightly. We get to see Stratos' people, the Birdmen, in the city of Avion, and we get to meet his sister Delora in this episode. And at the beginning they're having this huge festival celebration. Once a year he brings out the staff of Avion and pretty much uses it basically to have it like a fireworks show. But this thing is an incredibly powerful magical object, and Skeletor's plans at the beginning of this episode are to release a monster called Molkrom from his diamond prison, or crystal prison, and all his magic is failing. He's like, all the black arts he knows have all failed. The Elder's magic that originally imprisoned this monster, just it's too strong for Skeletor to break. So there is another race that are introduced in this episode called the Torgs. They're like kind of like subterranean cavemen sort of people that are, Molkrom's lackeys. And when he was imprisoned in the diamond below ground, the Torgs kind of went with him, sort of thing. Skeletor sends them to attack Avion to get hold of the staff, and it is a pretty brutal attack at the beginning of this episode, and the heroes quickly lose this battle, and Stratos is captured and taken to Skeletor. Our heroes find out the backstory of Molkrom, what happened, how he got imprisoned and whatnot, what the staff can be used for. That's strong enough to release him, and Molkrom does actually contain the power that would be strong enough to defeat Castle Grayskull. So a lot on the line in this episode, and the heroes set off on their journey to stop Skeletor from releasing Molkrom from his prison. When they get there, unfortunately, Skeletor has kind of taken control. Well, not kind of, he has taken control of Stratos. He's got him under a spell and sets Stratos on the heroes, along with a lot of copies of Stratos, kind of like clones, but they're more illusions than anything else. While the fight is going on between Stratos and Stratos clones, between He-Man, Tila Man-at-Arms, and Orko, and Delora, his sister, they don't want to be too rough on the Stratos clones because they don't know which one's the real one. But luckily Delora's there. She's able to kind of, when Stratos sees her and she's like, fight the magic, he starts to fight back, and it gives them the edge and seeing which one's the real Stratos. But he breaks the spell on his own, and he's like, my will has returned, and tells his clones that your will is gone. They just vanish. But unfortunately, through all this here, Skeletor does manage to release Molkrom from his prison and turns Molkrom on He-Man and the heroes, and again quickly they get beaten by him and imprisoned in a cave behind a stone wall. And Skeletor leaves on Stratos' back. He's kind of like a horse sort of a creature. Yes, huge, like, he's about twice the height of Skeletor, so Skeletor can, just pretty much just sit on his back like a little guy riding a horse, essentially. So they leave. Skeletor leaves the staff behind. The staff of Avion tells the Torgs to, put it into the vault, keep it safe. Whenever we defeat Grayskull, I'm going to come back, learn more of its secrets. But we also found out earlier in the episode of this staff, once it's used for evil purposes, if it's not undone quickly, the staff will self-destruct, and puts a timer on the clock for our heroes to get things sorted. To cut a long story short, in the rest of this episode, it's pretty much Skeletor and Molkrom putting their final attack on Castle Grayskull, and He-Man, Man-at-Arms, and Ram-Man, probably one of my favourite characters in the series, trying to make a stand against the two of them. And again, the heroes are up against it the whole way through this episode. Like, Ram-Man and Man-at-Arms get taken out really quickly by Skeletor's magic, and he uses like trees to kind of come to life and grab hold of them and twist around them and imprison them within the branches. He-Man and Molkrom are going face to face, and it's pretty much a strong standoff between the two of them. Back at the Torg's cave, Tina is there trying to get the staff of Avion. She manages to get it from the vault, gives it to Stratos to take to He-Man, and at the end of the episode, He-Man gets hold of the staff, and you're expecting him to actually just use the staff and imprison the beast again, but again Molkrom gets the upper hand and He-Man knocks the staff from his hand. By the end of the episode, the staff doesn't so much say it in the episode, but He-Man throws the staff into the air, kind of, it's going to explode, so we need to get it away as far away as possible before it causes too much damage. So he uses a super strength and launches it into the atmosphere of Eternia, and the staff, instead of exploding, kind of resets itself. It kind of feeds its magic back and puts Molkrom back into the diamond prison and falls back to the ground safely. So that doesn't so much say that in the episode, that's what happened, but that's what I was watching it. That's what I took from that part. The final moments of this episode, Skeletor does actually manage, throughout everything that's going on here, between He-Man fighting with Molkrom, Man-at-Arms, and Ram-Man imprisoned with the trees, Skeletor has had a free run at the drawbridge of Castle Grayskull, and he is using his magic on the outside, trying to open the door, and the sorceress is inside using her magic, trying to keep the door closed. And Skeletor does prove to be the stronger out of the two by the end of this episode. The sorceress calls for help from He-Man, but before he can get there, her magic starts to fail her, and she just drops to her knees, and the drawbridge opens up, and Skeletor is pretty much, just about to walk across into Castle Grayskull as the victor. But He-Man turns up as usual at the end of the day, puts him into a bear hug, like, where do you think you're going, Skeletor? And Skeletor, realising that all his plans in this episode are in ruins, and it's only him and He-Man that are going to go toe to toe in this moment, he's like, fair enough, I'll get you again another time, and he uses his magic and disappears. And at the end of the episode, we get the little celebration and Avion once again. Everybody gets a happy ending at the end of this episode, which sounds a lot worse than what I meant it to sound. But yes, there's a funny little moment where Argo is getting chased through the air screaming for help, and it's one of the children of Avion with a remote controlled version of the fighters that we saw at the beginning of this episode. The original first attack in Avion at the start of this, there's the Torgs turned up in these airborne fighters that strangely kind of looked like TIE fighters from Star Wars on the outsides. They've got those little wing things that like Darth Vader's TIE Fighter in particular would have had. So yes, there's a little bit of artistic license taken from Star Wars for them. So he's getting chased through there by this little toy basically at the end of it, and the episode closes out into the PSA as usual at the end of these episodes. And every episode, every review, I always said love the PSAs. This one here is Argo pops up and he's beside like a tree and there's like fruit on it, and he's like, this looks really tasty, I might have a little bite. But then he says, do you know what, you need to be really careful what you eat. Just because something looks good and you think that it might taste good doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be safe to eat. So go and find an adult and ask them first before you sample anything you're not sure about. So yes, that is the end of it, and it's just pretty much, if you're walking along and see a berry in a tree, don't eat the thing if you're not sure about it. So that is the end of that episode. This is a very, very good episode, very strong episode, and a lot of battles and fights going on in this one. And yes, I really did enjoy it.